Hello, my name is Kurt Volker. I'm a distinguished fellow here at the Center for European Policy Analysis, and this is State of the Alliance, where we bring together thought leaders from Europe and North America to talk about some of the most important challenges facing the transatlantic community. I'm honored today to be here with the Ambassador of Finland to the United States, His Excellency Mikko Hautala, and I am dying to hear his thoughts on how are things going with the transatlantic community, and how has the war in Ukraine affected all of this going forward? So, Ambassador, thank you for coming. I'd like to just start out with your overall assessment. We are now 1 year into Russia's latest invasion of Ukraine, and this one an all-out invasion. How do you assess how it's going on the ground, how it's going for the Ukrainians and the Russians, and how has the Western community responded?
Well, Kurt, first of all, great to see you again, and thanks for inviting me. It's been a dramatic year, obviously, and also for my nation, because as one of the consequences of this war was that we decided to apply for NATO. So it has caused a lot of changes also in the Northern Europe. But obviously, for Ukraine, I think the main result is a major setback for Mr. Putin, because his plans to quickly kind of run over Ukrainian armed forces and occupy the country where basically didn't happen. So I think we've been successful in countering the attack in the first round. But I'm increasingly getting a sense that we should not underestimate the Russian military power. We have to continue to take it seriously. And I think we have to do some rethinking for the next months and perhaps years to come, because I don't expect that this will.
What would that rethinking look like? More types of weapons, faster quantities? What do you have in mind?
I think we have both in mind, because we obviously see that faster quantities is something that must be there, because frankly, Finland has now given more military aid per capita than, for example, the US. Wow. Yes, so other Europeans are doing their share, including my country. But at the end of the day, and we actually have now 18-month plan to do that support, but still we need to get our defense industry really up and running in order to make sure that we have something that we can replace with the weapons we give to Ukraine.
Yeah. Do you think Putin will ever stop this war? Do you think he'll ever back down?
I think he will not stop until he sees either the result or situation which is kind of convincing to him that he doesn't have an option of continuing, or he will see a kind of alliance or kind of a coalition of forces. What I mean by this is Ukrainian armed forces plus the support, material support they get. Unless he sees a kind of sort of a coalition of forces and factors that make the war look unwinnable to him. I don't think he sees it like that at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And how are people in Russia doing? Are they looking at this war saying, we're going to win this, we're doing great, or are they getting concerned?
I think most of the Russians are pretty okay with the conflict as such. Most of the Russians have not really felt the impact in their everyday life. I think it's, and even those Russians who were initially quite shocked and kind of said that this is not the right thing to do, I think they have now decided to go along. So I think we are facing a fairly united country in that sense. And I never believed in any kind of a major kind of uprising or reaction against the war. And unfortunately, I was right.
Right. And of course, you're one of the people in Washington who knows Russia the best, having served over 8 years, I guess, as the #2 in the embassy and then the ambassador. Do you see fractures within the leadership in Russia? We hear about Prigozhin and Kadyrov and the challenges to Shoigu. Do you put any faith in that?
Short answer is no. Obviously, in these kind of situations, there are all kinds of differences, and we tend to get some of us tend to get too excited about that. We don't see any real fracture within the elite, and I think it's a kind of an empty road, or sort of not the right road to pursue, because it leads us to think that let's wait until something bad happens inside Russia that automatically solves the problem. I don't think this will
That's
provide
not
the
going to
solution.
happen. Yeah, I understand. Okay. Well, Finland made some of its own decisions over the course of the past year, deciding after being a neutral country since World War II to seek to join NATO and winning the support of NATO with all the two parliaments having ratified. What went into that Finnish decision? What caused you to do that now?
I think the main reason was that we basically saw Russia that started the outright full war against Ukrainians. So I think we felt that the situation had changed quite dramatically. That was one reason. Second reason, I think it felt for us quite logical to make the final step because we had been very close to NATO for roughly 30 years. We started to fly F-18s like 1992, we decided to buy them. So we've been integrating with NATO, with the US for quite some time. So I think the final step, was logical, natural, and actually it was quite short. And also the way that how, for example, the US Senate did ratify the treaty, I think it simply shows that our capabilities were understood and also respected, and that's why we got the so quick support.
Do you think Ukraine will end up in NATO?
It's very early to say. We of course see that they have given the promise already in Bucharest, like how many years? 16 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's been a long time. I think, and obviously Finland not being a member to NATO, we don't have a position on the issue. I think we have a position so far on where we should be. But I would say so that if this war will become a sort of a result, if there's going to be a result which will somehow protect the European security order, somehow the Ukrainians, the security needs must be somehow covered.
Yeah, I like to tell people that at the end of this war, Ukraine's going to have the largest, the best trained, the best equipped, and most experienced military in Europe. So it'd be dangerous not to have them in NATO. Now, what about Sweden and Turkey and that hold up right now? Where do you see that going?
Well, we have seen that we haven't really seen or heard any comments from Ankara since the earthquake. And obviously from our side, and I also take it the Swedish response is the same, that we now focus on helping them. So we are not calling and asking how is it going with our NATO application. I think we have to focus on helping Turkey just right now. I expect that our official expectation is still that we hope to be members before Vilnius summit. And the sooner the better. I think in this security situation in Europe, I don't think anyone in NATO really benefits from this kind of a bit of a gray situation when we are almost there, but not fully legally.
Right. Now, Turkey, of course, is raising issues about the PKK and their ability to have a harbor in Sweden. How do you assess all this?
Well, obviously, I think my Swedish colleague would be the best person to respond to that. But I think if you look at Finland and Sweden, our situation with legislation, our practices, how do we deal with terrorism are fully in line with the NATO practices, US, etc., etc. So I don't see a difference here. Obviously, we are rule of law countries. We have strong legislation that protects the rights of the people and their expression, freedom of expression, and things like that. So I think that continues to be the case. But in terms of how do we treat terrorism and how do we deal with the problem, I don't really see a problem.
Let's come back to the military effort in Ukraine. You said that you think it's going to need more types of systems and more quantity. What in particular do you think Ukraine needs now that they're not getting?
I think quite obviously they need a lot of ammunition. And I frankly do believe that what is kind of lacking on our side is a full sense of the industrial response. Like I said, it's going to get difficult at one point to keep on giving unless you know when you can replace things you gave with something that you absolutely need. And also there's a talk of backfilling, that you have to kind of go back to the stockpiles that you have had before the conflict. I think it's going to be different. I think we have to talk about add-filling because the needed stockpiles we are supposed to have even after the war are going to be higher than we perhaps thought before the conflict. So I think the industrial response, not only in types of weapons, but also in quantities, I think this is still in work in progress.
Yeah. And anything in particular types of systems? I mean, a lot of people talk about longer range artillery or about aircraft. You mentioned that Finland has F-18s and is looking at new aircraft. What about in those categories?
Well, I think it's a discussion, as you know, with the Ukrainians. They say what they need, then we see what we can give. I obviously say that from the Finnish side, like I said, we've given quite a lot. Those weapons that we have, some of them we also manufacture, so we have a bit of a control ourselves how much we have. But still, for us, it's always quite a risky situation to give something because we have the long border, famous 830 miles, and we are responsible for that defense. So obviously we always have to think really not only twice but 3 times before we make such a decision. But still we have given a lot.
Yeah. We've talked all on the security side now, but I want to bring up the economy as well. Ukraine has had a fall of GDP of over 30% in the past year. And the port of Odessa is not functioning as a normal seaport right now. It's only limited to certain grain exports. What do you think should be done about the economy?
Well, it's clear Ukraine needs massive help for years to come, and I think this is something we have to realize and get ready to give it, because frankly I don't see any choice here. Obviously we have to also see where we can be helpful in terms of reconstruction and all that, but I think we are in the middle of the conflict yet. And the kind of the structural issues of economy, how to really rebuild it, they have to wait until we have more clarity on the outcome of the war.
Yeah, a couple of things that are coming up. The United Kingdom is going to be hosting the next Ukraine Recovery Conference. They are working on ideas about helping the insurance industry provide war insurance for industry. And they're also very focused on getting the private sector involved, because I think there's going to be a limit to public funding, but investment will actually be what drives the economy. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think security and military security especially and sort of investment, they are closely linked, because obviously if you have innovative practices in terms of insurance, that will help to an extent, but fundamentally Ukraine needs to have military security. That will give the investors confidence they need in investing. So I think there's no kind of a way going around the military requirement. This is the fundamental.
Well, one last word then. You're here in Washington as the ambassador of Finland. You're meeting with officials, the administration and the Congress. What's your advice to the United States?
I would say that let's stay the course together. I think the Europeans and the US, we need each other in this challenge. I still want to strengthen the point. We need to have this industrial response. It's not only the US, it concerns the Europe. We have to kind of come up with solutions, because this is what we need, and not only for that conflict, but also for the years to come.
Great. Well, Ambassador Hautala, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being with us. And again, this is State of the Alliance here with the Center for European Policy Analysis.
Thanks a lot.